Boo! 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 Boo!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Adam and Noah's annual Halloween Screamatorium, or whatever we're gonna call it. Clearly, Noah does not understand how Halloween works. So, we are up, undead. We can hear the voices of vengeful spirits coming from the hall from time to time, and also from Noah. Although, I have to wonder if he's really figured out exactly what that's supposed to mean.
Boo. Well, anyway, if you haven't read the title already, we're doing a thing, and,
we are looking at a book that has come out quite a while ago, but is very pertinent to the holiday at hand, so we might as well read it and review it.
And let's hope that we don't die during this filming.
Because that's what happens on Halloween.
Lest we become vengeful Native Americans and come back to haunt Ouija boards all over the nation.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what happens on Halloween. Everybody knows that.
Mm.
Now, we are looking at a collection of Halloween specials written by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, Batman Haunted Night. Now, during the 1990s, Jeff Loeb, the writer, Tim Sale, of course, being the artist, did a series of Halloween specials in 1993, 1994, and 1995.
Yep.
This is the compilation of them.
Of those three.
Yeah, they're all actually quite similar, although they share some thematic differences. But they do, I think, make a very nice collection in terms of structural unity. Eventually, they did go on to write a 12-issue story arc that was also released separately called The Long Halloween, of course, because they had, up until that point, been writing Halloween specials.
The Long Halloween is very good, by the way.
Yeah, and the sequel, Dark Victory, we should probably take a look at some point. But for now...
Maybe next year.
Yeah, but for now, since today is Halloween, we are looking at the stories that are most relevant to the occasion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's actually 3 stories, one of which is called...
Fear.
And one of which is called...
Madness.
And one of which is called...
Ghosts.
Yes, Fears, Madness, and Ghosts. Now, I think we said that we should probably talk about each of these stories individually, since they were originally published individually. So, let's talk first about Fears.
Yep.
So, Halloween special, what happens during Fears?
Me?
Fine, me. Scarecrow runs amok throughout Gotham, and during this time, Bruce Wayne goes to agonizing lengths to chase him, to apprehend him, just to essentially do his job. Because Scarecrow
is... As Batman.
Yes, because Scarecrow is not doing some sort of tremendous master plan. He's just running around causing havoc.
And nursery rhyming.
Yes, nursery rhyming quite a bit, as he is famed to talk. And overall, throughout the story, Bruce, not Batman, but Bruce, meets a lovely young woman at a party that he throws, and he begins to ask himself, and has to struggle with the conflict of questioning whether he should continue to defend Gotham as Batman, as he has dedicated himself to doing, or if it's more worth it to go off and try to start a new life and try to actually be happy in some way, shape, or form. Very grim stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very grim.
Very mature.
Mature, definitely. One thing I will say, the idea of treating comic book characters in a particularly dark or serious way can sometimes turn out very badly.
As happened through most of the 90s.
So it has been said. But this book, all of these stories, while they do offer a very grim take on Batman's psyche, which is pretty much what all of this is about, it's really about how Batman feels. It's that kind of a story. It's not very plot-driven, I would say. It's not very conflict-driven. Whether it's conflict, the conflict is all
most of these stories don't have any world-threatening super criminal activities. It's just
even within Gotham. Yeah, it's relatively minor stuff. I mean, there are supervillains, but there's no master plan. There's no tremendous mystery. It's Batman going around just fighting crime on a day-to-day basis and reflecting on his life. Fears, I think, does this very well. And one thing that I have to say, before we even get into why the plot works, visually, Tim Sale specifically in this series, not even necessarily so much in other things, I think does a tremendously effective job of capturing the aesthetic of Batman, just that visual aesthetic.
We could just show the first page. That works well enough.
You could just show the first page. I think that everything that he draws looks incredibly ink-heavy, looks really inky, and really very much like it was drawn. You have like a lot of smoothness that you see, even in the more coarse-looking comics, almost as though they were done or touched up on a computer, which we all know that they are. This hand-lettered and completely, you have just the architecture, you have the play of shadows on Scarecrow here, and it continues throughout the entire thing. Batman himself gets a tremendous amount of atmosphere. Just, we see Batman standing here. You see just this, really, I'm not going to say dark, I'm not going to say grim, I just think it's really an iconic way of portraying Batman, and I think it just so simply conveys all of the things that we come to expect, while at the same time, as the story goes on, digging way deeper and just expressing so many different, I don't know, emotional states that he goes through. Because he really gets dragged through the mud in this story.
He is,
What happens?
Well, Scarecrow, of course, uses fear toxin, so, I mean, just right off the bat, using that villain sets up how emotionally driven this comic is going to be. And it is very driven. Throughout the story, instead of having one thought bubble, Batman has two. One as Batman and one as Bruce Wayne. And they're constantly kind of arguing over motives, like why he does a thing. So he'll say, like, he's injured during a chase, and he'll say, gotta get back to Alfred for medical help. And then Bruce Wayne will say, gotta get back to Jillian, who's this girl that he's fallen in love with. So you just see that he's kind of arguing with himself over why he's doing it and what he wants to do.
And this is the longest of the stories. It's actually in 3 parts. One thing that I love here
is in the beginning of part 2.
It's in the beginning of part 2. Just the way that this is shown. You have these black silhouettes over Gotham at night, and then we turn the page and bam, lightning flash, and you can actually see the flash of lightning as you turn the page. And you have, one of them was Batman, one of them was a gargoyle.
The whole time!
But what does this, and you have Gotham looking very, I think that it's interesting, there's, in terms of time period, most of what I think we tend to see of Gotham is usually, or lately has been setting it in very much the modern day. There's still a lot of ambiguity in this. I mean, they will drive cars from, like, the 40s. All of that stuff. Just the image of when he starts having a flashback to what's going on. I mean, this is
well, it's not a flashback.
Well, it is a flashback technically.
But it's a flashback. It's not a flashback, like,
just,
long.
It's a flashback to something that just happened, like, the day before. But overall, in terms of era, there's this aesthetic that I think carries over very much into the animated series, which is running concurrently with this. And overall, I think it kind of works almost better than having a completely modern Gotham. This is a very low-tech depiction of Batman. But
his grappling hook isn't even, like, electronic at all. It's all just...
He's just swinging on a rope. As we can see right here. And that sense of falling. I'm kind of in love with the way that it looks visually, so I'm probably going to be taking way too long just showing things that I like. But it's that kind of...
And there's a lot to like.
But it's just that kind of thing. You have Batman and the Gargoyle, then the lightning strikes, and one of them is Batman and one of them is the Gargoyle, but they both really look the same.
Ears.
They both have the pointy ears, and they both look the same, and they're both
positioned the same.
Yeah, so it's like, Batman, what is Batman? Is Batman a person, a human being, or is he just this fixture? And... again, he gets gassed, he gets attacked by flying things.
Thornbushed.
He gets a lot of terrible things happening to him. And overall, as this happens, he has an acid trip dream sequence, and it's all a matter of him just struggling
with himself.
Does he become the person that Gotham needs, or does he just do...
Or does he become the person that Bruce Wayne needs?
Yeah. That Gotham needs or that Bruce Wayne needs. And overall... what I like about it, and I'm not going to spoil or anything, it's that while he does end up making his decision at the end, he really doesn't have a choice.
Yeah.
It's even when he has his resolution.
And that's also a big issue to the comic. It's whether or not Bruce Wayne has a choice in being Batman, or whether it's like Gotham is choosing for him.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this big issue of, I guess, choice, or what's the word? It's another C word. It's like choice. Like
Free will?
no, it begins with a C.
Determinism?
No. Sorry. I'm gonna get this. Consent. I think when you're raped, it's because of lack of
Consent.
and that's how I remember the word consent.
That's horrible. But overall, you also have this internal monologue. There's a lot of internal monologue going on.
There's 2 internal monologues.
Actually 3, because Jillian, the woman who Batman is in love with, is presented at times as internal monologue. You also have Jim Gordon. We see things from his perspective. He's a very strong supporting character here.
In this book, or in the
even
next
in
one?
this one, there's this wonderful sweet moment where Batman, he's apprehended the Scarecrow early on, and then Jim invites him to a party at Bruce Wayne's house, and Batman's like, no, and then he leaves. And it's just this really sweet thing, him reaching out to Batman.
And then Gordon's like, I'm sorry I even tried.
Yeah, but it's like that he is trying to kind of reach out to this guy who he works with, but he really doesn't know him, and who is this person? I think it's an interesting little...
And, like, Batman is one of his friends.
Yeah, but it's an interesting look at how kind of weird their relationship can be.
Because Batman and Jim Gordon don't go out to the bars after every catch and shoot the shit.
No, he just turns around and Batman's gone.
Yeah.
So, overall, I think it's very effective. I'm trying to figure out if there's anything else about the plot that really needs to be said. It's, again, also really... The depiction of the Scarecrow... It's
one of the better depictions that he's had.
I would say it's probably one of the worst.
Worst? Really?
He just essentially kind of runs around reciting nursery rhymes and making shit happen.
Yeah, but I'd say that, I don't know, maybe it's just the story, but he's definitely threatening in this.
He's threatening, but I think he's threatening because of what he does and not because of who he is.
Well, he's not a threatening person. He's just a kid who was bullied in high school.
Well, I think the way that Jeff Loeb always writes the Scarecrow, which he does fairly often, he's just kind of this mentally unhinged guy who runs around making people afraid and doing whatever crazy things he's up to. He's never the kind of guy who's up with a master plan. Mm-hmm. He's never the kind of guy who's really going to be... I don't know, he's never going to be that cerebral kind of criminal that Batman has gotten into fighting recently. Not recently, but always. He's always just going to be, when we see him written by Jeff Loeb, kind of a... I don't know, just an adversary who causes trouble.
Yeah, but he's good at it.
Yeah, I think it works in this story. I think in the stories that this character, when he's written like this, is written to, I think it's appropriate, I think it's fitting. And I think the reason it works is that Scarecrow is really not an important part of this story at all. He's just kind of the adversary to cause all of these problems for Batman.
Yeah.
I think it works, but I would think that overall, if you look at the Scarecrow
another thing I
other
found
media,
when reading this is that, like, when reading it, because as you read Batman, you kind of, like, just think to yourself that Bruce Wayne will never be happy.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he does meet this woman, and the fact that he just ran into Scarecrow and got gassed, kind of makes, at least it made me think that maybe this whole thing is just a hallucination on Batman's part, and instead of the Scarecrow trying to make him, like, afraid, he's trying to just sedate Batman. So that's kind of a thought that I had running until the end where stuff happens.
It's interesting because I think the idea of Batman settling with someone is something that is played with fairly often, especially in other media. Because in comics, he does have several women who he does have commitments to on some level. I mean, there is Catwoman, who he goes from being vaguely flirtatious with to being in a pretty committed relationship with, depending on who's writing.
There's Talia.
And when we are. There's Talia,
who mothered him a son.
Interestingly enough, it seems to me that Talia is kind of in love with Batman, and Ra's al Ghul is completely in love with Batman.
Yeah, Ra's wants Batman to kill him so he can take over the League of Assassins.
I think that Raish kind of looks at, I think, Batman almost as a son, almost as a lover. And I think that that is something that I will talk about more. Not right now.
If it is his son, that's kind of creepy because he's the son that he wants his daughter to marry.
Yeah, I know. Because I think there is definitely something very incestuous with that family. But that's getting off topic. But I think that the idea of Batman settling down with someone, it's toyed around with. It was played with in Mask of the Phantasm movie. Batman Begins. There was an episode of Batman, the New Batman Adventures, where he meets this woman who it turns out was actually a plant person created by poison ivy. So it's
Wasn't
something
that? There's also another episode where Robin starts dating a girl who turns out to be Clayface.
Yeah, that was like this really weird Miyazaki style type thing. But yes, that also happens. But
girls are frequently a part of Batman's life.
Yeah, they do play around with this idea. Mm-hmm. But I think that as far as handling that story and telling that story, I think this book probably does it more effectively than, let's say, Batman Begins.
Mm-hmm.
So, overall, I think it's definitely worth it. I mean, I don't know if there's really very much more to say about it, other than I love the art, because it has this really... I'm not going to say that it's grim and spooky. It is, but I think what strikes me most about it is that it's just...
I think it's
What
uncanny.
word would you use to describe this? Uncanny. How so?
Well, it's just, like, the sky is pink.
Yeah, they do play around with color.
And you have a lot with, like, the faces, like, Scarecrow, his face looks too long, Batman looks a bit too, like, batty, not less man.
Yeah. It is not particularly realistic.
Yeah.
But I think as far as unrealistic looking art goes, it's kind of in the best way.
It's not impressionism.
Yeah, no, it's impressionism. It's
impressionistic. I don't know how art is
impressionistic.
It's not impression. Here, Batman kind of looks like a crab.
The thing is, I think that it's kind of... It's scary not in a spooky way, but it's scary kind of in a big, mature, grown-up kind of way. That this is just kind of a dark and kind of menacing world that we live in. It's mostly light and shadows. I mean, there's a lot done with light and a lot done with shadows. I cannot get into everything in this book because I think the art is just fantastic in that way. But yeah, you have the black and white scenes. You have even the scenes that are in color, the contrast between light and darkness, even in scenes that are supposed to be fairly warm-looking. I mean, if you see here just like the way that shadow is used on people... That scene before, that panel with those two panels with the gargoyles and the lightning, I think just this contrast between light and shadow create this really big, menacing world that is just what Batman lives in. It's Batman, too. It's just this big, dark, scary place that he's kind of lost inside. But that he also